welcome to the Liverpool Community Podcast. I'm your host, Chase Johnson Lynch, here in the Big Condo Studios. And as you know, when you're watching this show, we endeavor to bring you interesting people from the community who have something to say and that we feel you should hear from. Now, this time, I think we're reaching way up high on top of the mountain, right? Not like I'm trying to tell any sermons or anything, but we got a vicar in the house. Pretty much, we're joined by, and I'm going to only say it now because he's going to tell me not for long, Reverend Henry Corbett. How you doing, Henry?
Hi, Chase. Yep.
Yeah, well, don't be nervous, Henry. I mean, like, the thing about it is that's who you are. You're a reverend for now, but the point is that you're doing something I never even actually thought of, that they consider the retirement age for when people are vicars, do they, and everything like that. And like, Henry, your time is coming to an end, isn't it?
It is January 31st. I hit 70. I was born in 1953. And
You're looking good for 70.
And as a Church of England vicar, at 70, they reckon, step down for a younger person. And I don't have a problem with that. I can understand that, but I'll miss Everton a lot.
I can imagine because, first of all, Tom Cruise, they say that 60 is the new 40. And I'm looking at Henry here, and it's like, why are they trying to, tell you need to step down? Especially since you got so much life in you. When we're going to hear your story, you've been doing so much within your community. But then it's like, that's got to feel a little bit, a sting, because you don't feel like you're ready to go, do you?
No. And you don't retire from life, Chase, do you? So,
no, Henry, I know you got all that life to go out there for, but
so,
I'm talking about what you do because of what you have done.
Yeah, but I'll keep going. So we'll move out of Everton to give the new person, my successor, plenty of room and space to be themselves and do their work. And my wife Jane and I are going to live near Prince's Park in Toxteth, and I'll help out in churches there.
Yeah, well, I mean, so like 40 years, yeah. Let's go a bit to the origin, because you said you came in as a helper like around 75 and everything. So tell us about how it all began for you there.
Yeah, so 1975, I'd finished at university. Mm-hmm. I was thinking of being a vicar, and I thought I need to know about real life. And someone said there's a place in Liverpool called Shrewsbury House where you can volunteer for a year. I was also really keen to get an ordinary job because as a vicar, I didn't want to be visiting people and having never done a 9 to 5 or... So I got a job down by the docks with Sharp Ship Stores.
Wow.
I read The Ragged-Trousered Philanthropist by Robert Trussell. Recognized some of the things he was talking about in the way people were treated. Helped out in the Shoesy and in St. Peter's Church. And then came back in 1978 as the curate at the church.
That's when you were ordained.
Ordained, yep.
Now, I mean, like, I believe you said the church... One of the main churches you were working at was St. Peter's Church, but there was also another one.
I took on another one a bit later, in about 2000, yeah.
Yeah. So how was that to, go between two churches?
It's not as easy as having one church, but quite a few.
Sunday's not that long of a time in a day.
Yeah, I know. Yep, good working day, but I do work other days as well, Chase.
Okay.
But
obviously.
But
explain it to me, bro. I don't know.
He's right. 6 days work, 1 day off. But the quite a number of vicars and priests have two churches. So when the vicar at St. John Chrysostom's church died, and I was asked to take it on, I felt fair enough. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is it close by or?
Yeah, just up the hill. Yep.
Oh, okay.
So that's on Queen's Road, and St. Peter's is on Langgrove Street. So there are good links.
So, I mean, before we get to the kind of the work you were doing in the community and stuff like that, when did you meet your wife?
At the Shoesy, when I came as a volunteer in 1975, she did
that long ago. Wow.
She did the same thing. She was heading off to be a nurse, so she had a bit of a gap. So we both had a gap year helping out at the Shoesy, and then 4 years later, in 79, we got married.
Wow. Now, for those who don't know, just by me saying his name, but Henry's wife is Jane Corbett, who actually happens to be a local counselor here in Liverpool.
She did. I mean, she was a nurse, she worked at the Royal. Then the kids came along. She got involved in local community activism. And then the previous Labour councillor was moving away, and so she was asked to be the Labour candidate. And she got in 2002 and has been Labour councillor for Everton ever since.
Wow. So when you were telling me, like, we do show notes before we go on air, that you were involved in particular campaigns, which we're going to talk about, was it spearheaded by Jane, or was it spearheaded by yourself, or did you work together?
I'd say work together. So our first home, when I came back and was ordained in 78, was in Milburn Heights, 54 Milburn Heights on the 14th floor, which is off Conway Street. And the block is still standing.
Really?
It's now called View 146. Bit posher than when it was back in the 70s. But we lived on the 14th floor, and I remember the chutes weren't in a very good state, and if there was a fire, I remember the fire people saying, yes, well, I'm afraid our ladders don't reach up to the 14th floor. And
So you're kind of like,
So there are we thinking, you know, if you're a person who cares for your community and you believe in a God who cares for your community, then you need to be involved in stuff. So I think those are the sorts of things where it started. And it was a double act, really, Jane and myself. But we needed to learn lots of lessons about how these things work, who takes the decisions, and how to do all that.
well, I mean, because of that, it sounds like that was probably one of the reasons why one of your campaigns was around saving the house, was around housing and everything. Was it around asylum seekers? Was it around poor conditions? Or
No, the asylum seekers came later.
Okay.
But when we came in the 70s, the housing in Everton was tower blocks and a lot of maisonettes. So the
I remember seeing old pictures. So yeah, there was a lot of them because they're all gone. Most of them are all gone now.
Yep.
Especially the ones that was around Lodge Lane and everything like that.
Yep.
So I mean, so yeah, go ahead, tell me.
So
what
in
you
Everton,
guys do.
17 tower blocks, but there are only
17.
but only 2 left now. The John F. Kennedy Heights on Everton Brow. So you
On Everton Brow, I love Everton Brow. And they had tower blocks up there.
three tower blocks, John F. Kennedy Heights. Yep. And Mazzini, Garibaldi, and Cavour used to hover over the Shusi Youth Club.
Wow.
And Jane and I were in Milburn Heights, and then there was Brynford Heights next door to there.
What's up with all these heights?
But the housing was beginning to struggle.
Yeah.
And the blocks were not being as well looked after as they could be. And the Arkwright Street estate was struggling. And then there was the Ratcliffe Street estate, which was built in the 70s and in the 80s hit real problems because it won a prize for its design. And when you went inside the houses, they were very well designed and whatever, but it was like a rabbit warren.
Yeah.
And if you had a car, you were supposed to park it on the outside and then walk in through these crisscross streets to find your house. Well, that doesn't make sense. Does it?
That's terrible.
Not many people have cars in Everton at that stage. And if you did,
Is this up around Everton Brow, like Everton Valley?
yeah, the Ratcliffe estate was up Everton Brow and off to the right. Yeah. And in the
empty
80s, the 80s was a lot of unemployment or a lack of paid work. Because, there used to be 20,000 people on the docks and then it went to 200. So think of all the jobs lost there.
Yeah.
So money was short and people came in and offered a certain heroin drug to people and offered some £10 notes and money. So the Ratcliffe estate, that particular housing area of the West Everton area, became a real problem. And I remember we called a local meeting. And I think some of the police thought, well, no one will come because, they're all caught up in drugs on the Ratcliffe estate. Well, they weren't all caught up in drugs. There were threats made, but we had a meeting. And I remember thinking, if 10, 20 people come, that will be a great start. We can work with that. 100 people came into the room. And
What are you from your constituency or?
from the Ratcliffe estate,
Yeah.
local people coming. Because
did they come because of you? Or?
No, it was West Everton Community Council, which was a residents group, called the meeting.
Yeah.
And there was just brilliant local wisdom. So the local wisdom was don't make a big issue of anti-drugs and because that ups the pressure.
Yeah.
Let's redesign the Ratcliffe estate. Let's make it a safer estate. So we concentrated on the housing issue because we knew if the housing was better, then the temptation to sell drugs and dodge the police would fall away. So that was the Ratcliffe campaign. But there were other campaigns. There was the Langrove Street Action campaign, which is another really important campaign. That was where, in the 80s, the militant council, which had plenty of really good ideas and good points, and one of them was housing, but they said for the Everton area, or the West Everton area, there should be a great big park. And the local wisdom was have a park up the top of the hill, but keep a bit of community, because if you just demolish everything, you'll lose the schools, you'll lose the shops. And
Is this round where the Gladstone is?
no, it's a bit that's more Stanley Park, isn't it? This is more Netherfield Road and Great Homer Street.
Yeah.
And there was the idea of a great big lake. And again, the local wisdom was, well, you've got a market on Great Homer Street.
Yeah,
If you have a
exactly.
huge, great big lake, that's not going to fit.
No.
So we worked to try and work out what would make sense in terms of a local planning project.
I remember they had a big swimming thing. Didn't they have a big swimming thing up there around that area and everything? Because people used to just jump into the Mersey, didn't they? And stuff like that. Up around where the Rotunda is.
Yeah, that's not far. The Rotunda's not too far.
So they had a big swimming thing up there.
Right.
But Great Homer Street, they would have to actually dig a hole to build a lake, wouldn't they?
Yeah, it was between Great Homer Street and Netherfield Road.
Right.
But so we worked for a local plan, and we squatted in one of the houses to make sure it wasn't bulldozed in 68 Arkwright Street. And then the militant councillors were disqualified, and a Liberal council came in, and they felt the local plan makes sense. And then a Labour council came in, and we had the Langrove Co-op. And if you go now onto Langrove Street, you can see some fabulous houses. And
Wow.
so that was a really important campaign. And the lovely thing about the campaign was that it brought people together. So as a local curate stroke vicar then, the local Catholic priest from the friary was involved. The Catholic priest from SFX was involved. There were people with no Christian faith at all who just wanted to save the houses because they were good houses and they shouldn't be knocked down. People agreed with knocking down the Ratcliffe estate and rebuilding. They agreed that the Arkwright Street estate was not in a good state. But the Langrove houses were 4-bed, really good family houses. So it was a local campaign. We didn't know whether we'd win or not, but miraculously we did. And you can now see lovely Langrove houses and the community wisdom. There are now good shops on Great Homer Street. And we did save a local primary school. And there's a group called Friends of Everton Park, and they make sure that the top park is, got the best view in Western Europe, I reckon.
Yeah, no, it sounds amazing. I'm just wondering, though, it's like, so would all of this civic-minded duty to your community, how did that affect you as the local vicar, reverend, and everything else like that? Or what type of, we kind of joked a little bit about around shtick and stuff, but what type of thing was it going on for you as far as delivering your sermons and everything else like that?
Plenty of vicars and priests down the ages have been really community-minded and
Today, I don't
activist.
know. I
Liverpool has a good record of that. And, at the time in the 70s and 80s, our bishop was David Shepherd, and he was very concerned for social action. And Derek Warlock, the Archbishop, they worked a lot together.
Well, you did say you were a big fan of Reverend Martin Luther King, so
Absolutely.
you come from that generation, so
Yeah.
I guess it's not that hard pressed to think that you felt the need to be a part of your community in action, less than words.
Yeah, and you look at Jesus in the Gospels, and where he saw injustice, he spoke out against it, and particularly if people were being put down.
Yeah.
So again and again in the Gospel stories, it's someone being pushed to the edge, and Jesus is welcoming them back in.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And the other thing about our campaigns was, you can do a campaign out of hate and anger, but you can also do a campaign out of love and controlled anger. Anger can be a good thing, can't you? When you see people being treated not very well, it's right to be angry, but then you need to channel it.
Well, I know. You did mention like one of the things you guys were involved in was sit-ins and stuff like that, and I think that was like the main thing. Also coming from King was, it wasn't about aggression. It was more about doing what was right in a peaceful manner.
Absolutely. And I mean, in the 80s, it was difficult. I mean, the Langrove campaign was not easy, but Martin Luther King had that great line about being tough-minded and tender-hearted, and that's based on Jesus' words, "Be wise as serpents and innocent as doves." And in any
I
campaign,
like that one.
oh, I love it, because in any campaign, you've got to be wise, haven't you? You've got to work out, as I said before, who's taking the decisions.
Yeah.
How can you, mount a campaign that'll work? Do you use the media or do you not? How do you let people know what's going on? Your communication stuff, your strategy. So wise as serpents, but innocent as doves. Don't cut corners or tell lies, and don't go for hate. You
Yeah.
can hate injustice or what people are doing, but you don't have to hate the people. And that was really important to us, and comes from Martin Luther King and back to Jesus.
Yeah. Well, obviously, with both you and your wife being so positive in your activism, I'm not surprised that you mentioned your daughter for a bit being what you call a craftivist
Sarah, yes.
and stuff like that. What's a craftivist?
A craftivist is someone who is an activist through craft. So
I knew it was, but I just thought it better.
Yeah. So what Sarah does is, she grew up with these campaigns. So there's a picture of Sarah, age 3, in front of 68 Arkwright Street in the Langrove campaign.
I bet she hates that.
And then in school, there was an issue with the lockers, that the poor year 7s having to carry around stuff. So she thought that they should have lockers so they can put their stuff in a locker. So she campaigned for lockers, working out who takes a decision in a school. It's the governing body, isn't it? Who's on the governing body? Who will be a friend and an ally to this little campaign? So she grew up with a bit of that. But she's not an extrovert.
No.
So she wasn't into banners and megaphones, and so she discovered that you could use craft in your campaign. So her most famous campaign is Marks and Spencer, who didn't pay the living wage, and Sarah thought, right, who takes the decisions in Marks and Spencer's? Well, it's their governing body, it's their board. So she works out the 14, 15 people on the board. So she gets 14 craftivists to work out each member of the board, what their interests are, what colour do they like wearing.
Yeah.
And they make them a handkerchief and say, don't blow it. Use your influence for good.
Don't
With
blow it.
a little simple leaflet saying the importance of the living wage. And they became shareholders and went to the board meeting. And ... a year later, Marks and Spencer pay the living wage, and the chair said it was the most effective campaign that they'd ever seen or experienced.
How old was he?
Partly because it was done not out of hate or aggression, but out of love.
But how old was he?
So she would have been in her 20s then. Yeah.
Okay. It would have been funny if you said she was like 15.
No, she was doing the lockers when she was 15.
Okay, well, hey, listen, man, it's all good stuff, I have that here, like you were talking about faith primary schools being a joint Catholic and Protestant regime. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, when I first came to Liverpool, I was born in Malta. My dad was in the Navy. My mum's from Glasgow. So maybe there's good Glasgow-Liverpool links. So I felt at home fairly quickly in Liverpool. And when I first came as a vicar, are you with a dog collar, are you a Protestant or a Catholic? So I'd say, well, I'm a Christian. And you get a sort of puzzled look. And it seemed to me surprising that, people who are calling themselves Christians should have this opposition. And people would say, I'm the opposite religion. And I think, well, the opposite religion to being a Christian is what I used to be, which was an atheist humanist. I didn't always believe in God. So that puzzled me. And partly through the campaigns, the churches began to work together. And it started with the lay people. So the lay people looked at each other and thought, well, you go to the Catholic Church and you go to the Anglican Church, and here we are working together. Why don't we worship together? So we started a Good Friday service, not with the priests and the vicars, but with the lay people leading it.
What's lay people?
Lay people as in not priest or vicars, not ordained.
Like laymen, okay.
Yeah, laymen. Yeah, absolutely. Or lay women. Yep.
Okay, I get you.
So, and it's been a lovely story of the churches working together. And then our Catholic primary school the friary was under threat of closure because of the depopulation with all the housing changes. But we managed to save a school, and let's make it a joint Church of England Catholic primary school. So Faith Primary School. And then we just got the new building in before 2010, before austerity hit.
Yeah.
So there's a lovely new building, Faith Primary School. I was in there earlier today, and,
Right.
that's a lovely story, really.
Well, you just revealed something that we didn't talk about, and I think that because you mentioned it, it might be interesting. You said that you weren't always a believer, so did you have like an awakening moment?
It took a bit of time, yeah, but I went up to university, and a guy called David Shepherd was speaking, and someone said, "Do you want to go in here and David Shepherd speak?" Well, as far as I was concerned, he was a cricketer who played for England, and I enjoy my sport. I love my cricket and my football. So I thought, okay, I'll go along and hear David Shepherd. Might be some cricket stories. I remember listening to him make 100 against Australia as a young kid. And I came out of that talk thinking I'll give the Christian faith one last look. I mean, I think it's wishful thinking, and the more I looked at the evidence for particularly Jesus of Nazareth and the sort of guy he was, and I met Christians, and I thought that, they don't look as though they're deluded. And so I became a Christian in my university days, and have gone on ever since. And,
Wow.
and obviously you
I mean, so it's possible for people to change.
absolutely, people change all the time, don't they?
Yeah, well, I
In
know.
little or big ways.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's just kind of like, you're not just one thing, and that's what people should just always realize. You know,
We keep on learning, don't we?
well, we should.
Should, yeah.
Instead of that old adage, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So let's look at these retirement plans, because you were talking about a big event coming up, but you also said you have a final service at St. Peter's and stuff like that. Is this being planned for you, and you're just like, I'm just gonna go with the flow, man? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the Shuzi are planning a thing on Friday night, tomorrow night, and they've kindly set that up. My children are coming up, so that'd be nice. My little grandson is coming up.
Nice.
One of my brothers is coming up, so that's really nice. And hopefully Shuzi ex-club members and helpers and whatever will turn up.
All kind of like people whose lives you affected over the 40 years.
Yeah.
That would be really nice. Wouldn't it?
That would be lovely. And last Sunday, I had a service in St. John Chrysostom's Church, and that was great because quite a few different groups use the centre. So the Morris dancers and the Taekwondo group and the line dancers and a Kenyan fellowship who uses the church on a Sunday evening. So that was really nice. And then, my last service in St. Peter's will be this Sunday. And food afterwards in the Shuzi. You're welcome, Chase.
You know what? Again, another invite.
Another invite,
I mean,
yeah.
hey, I don't know, but you said you planned. Yeah, I know. Yeah, all right. I think you said at this service you planned on providing some film clips from someone who was a local writer, Murray Watts,
Yep.
and who made a film called The Miracle Maker. Why don't you tell us why you wanted to show clips from that?
Yeah. Well, going back 1999, as in the millennium, and someone said to me, Henry, you ought to do something about the Christian faith, because isn't the millennium supposed to be about Jesus
Y2K?
somewhere?
Yeah.
So I went to the local education centre and said, shall I put on a little course about a faith for the millennium? And they said, yeah, of course, yeah, that's fine. And so we were the most popular course along with salsa dancing. So, and I enjoyed doing that. And ever since, I've always enjoyed doing a little course about faith and what makes sense. And I realized
with film.
that film clips could be fantastic as introductions. So I like using little film clips. So the one you're thinking about is The Miracle Maker, and the screenplay was by a guy called Murray Watts, who was born and bred on the Wirral, came to the Shuzi back in the early 70s, really enjoyed helping there. And then he's subsequently been a screenwriter for a number of things. And in the 1990s, again with the millennium coming up, he wrote the screenplay for The Miracle Maker, which is an animated film with little models, and he brought them into the Shuzi just today. And so you get, there's a model of Andrew, and amazing detail. I mean, they took 3 years making this film. 50 million people have watched it.
Wow.
Ralph Fiennes plays Jesus. Richard E. Grant is John the Baptist. So it's got a cracking cast. And so I'll
That's
show.
like a voice cast though as well, though, isn't it?
Yeah, doing the voices, because these little models are
Yeah.
the characters. But it's brilliantly done.
So
So I'll
cool.
show a clip from that. And the other clip I'll show is from Selma.
Yeah. Now I thought
Because-
that was an interesting, double act there. So why Selma? Even though I know the importance of Selma, but some people might not.
Yeah, well, Selma was the Great Montgomery campaign with Martin Luther King, and it's just a great story, again, of a bit like what we've been talking about. Christians and people who aren't Christians working together to make the world a better, fairer place. And there's the lovely bit where the song Glory comes in at the end. And it's always been important to me to have hope, and it's easy to lose hope when things go against you. And in our Everton area, we have more than our fair share sometimes of early deaths, which is sad, and some tough times. But there's a great community spirit, and there is that wit and humour and hope. And so I'll play a little bit where Glory is sung, and you see the people marching across the bridge.
Oh yeah. I think Common sings in that one and everything. But what's interesting is how a vicar from Everton plans on planting his flag in Tostiff, Princess Park.
Well, keen to stay in Liverpool. Jane may carry on. She'll be up for election in May. But we wanted to stay in Liverpool, and our kids thoroughly agreed with that, even though they're working all sorts of places now.
But I mean, going from the north to the south end of town.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to that challenge. Everton, when I first came, was very white working class. Now it's much more diverse, and that is fantastic. We had a whole 2 tower blocks. The tower block where Jane and I used to live suddenly was filled with asylum seekers in the early 2000s, and that was another campaign that we were involved in to try and help them get treated fairly, and also to help people understand some of the issues that they were facing. So I'm looking forward to being in Toxteth and getting involved in maybe a youth club there, and helping out in churches there.
yeah, well, I mean, I was asking you, you've been of service for like 40 years, probably even more now. But how do you hope to unwind?
Oh, I think balance is really important in life, isn't it? And as well as giving out, you need to take in. So I enjoy sport and watching football or cricket. Jane and I try and go to a monthly film in Fact, the Fact Cinema on just off Bold Street. I listen to Mark Kermode and see what sort of film he recommends, because I think I got that bug through taking my kids to films, and you'd come out and think, well, that's a fascinating film. It's all about relationships. It's all about forgiveness. It's all about hope. All these themes that are really important in life. So
I always love finding messages in film.
yeah, and every film has a message. Yeah,
Yeah, they do. But like you sound
sometimes
like
good, sometimes not so good.
yeah, but you sound like a film buff like myself, where it's like, if you're tuned to it, I feel you can find the messages very easily, and it's really cool because it is speculative, but like it was just because you mentioned Mark Kermode and everything.
Yeah.
That it just sounds nice.
Have you
So you
seen
don't wanna-
Parasite? We've seen that film.
You know what? I know a Parasite. I have not seen
What a
it.
message that has.
Really? You
about,
think so?
About inequality
Right.
and the problems of inequality.
Yeah, okay. Because I thought it was more like an upstairs, downstairs. So you mean an inequality just even in that?
Yeah, yeah. And the effect of inequality. Yeah. Which is not good.
No.
Not good.
No, not good at all. Well, Henry, I mean, it's been a pleasure talking with you. I mean, I haven't had a chance to speak to a vicar on this show, and it has been interesting. And one who is at the end of his term, but not the end of his life.
Yeah.
I mean, because as you just said, I mean, life moves on, and and I'm pretty sure that you'll look for more campaigns to be involved in and stuff like that. And I just want to celebrate because you will like share this, the work you have done for your community and everything, and hopefully that people can appreciate, learn a little bit more about Reverend Henry Corbett.
Thanks,
So
Chase. And I've learnt loads through being in Everton. It's been
Yeah.
a real education for me, and I've loved it.
Well,
And I'll
I've
miss
just learned a little bit about all those houses you were talking about. You know what I mean? But I'm pretty sure you took some people down memory lane with that one and everything. So I've been talking to Reverend Henry Corbett, who is about to retire and everything. And tell people where this final service would be in case they do want to come check it out.
St. Peter's Church, Everton, on Langro Street, on Sunday the 29th of January at 11 o'clock.
Okay, so this might actually be out before then. So hey, go check that out. Give you chances to say goodbye to a wonderful man who's been of service to a wonderful community. Thank you very much, Henry Corbett. I'm Chase Johnson Lynch. I'm your host, and you know what? We out of here.